My bold take of the week on Sunday, or not Sunday, on Thursday, was I took the Jets. And I said, you know what? Trap game for Houston. I bet Zach Wilson just kind of lets it fly. And I'm watching. I had it on. I had three TVs going. I gave that its own TV. It's 0-0 at halftime. The Jets have punted every single series. It was pretty embarrassing to watch. Now, it was wet, just an ugly game. He came out and played 15 minutes of game time, probably 35, 40 minutes of actual time. The best football he's ever played in his life. If you just watched like the four straight series in the second half, you'd go, that's what a high pick is supposed to look like. Physically, the arm talent, the movement skills, the accuracy, the explosiveness out of his arm. He just looked like a very, very talented player. And then after the game, right before I came on for this during Sunday Night Football, when it started being a blowout, I started kind of looking around the internet. And all of his teammates were basically saying, Zach had the attitude all week, like, fuck it. What's the worst that's going to happen? Send me to the bench again? And he's right. Like, you have nothing to lose at this point. Nothing. Clearly, the team, the front office, they don't care about you anymore. Everyone thinks you stink. Everyone views you as like an all-time level bust. And the crazy part about Zach Wilson, there was a play earlier this season. I forget who it was against. Maybe the Raiders. He rolled out at the end of the game to throw a Hail Mary. And he scrambled. It was against the Raiders because Max Crosby had him dead to rights. And he does like a juke move. And they end up losing the game. And he scrambles around and he gets close to the out of bounds line. And he lets the thing rip 50, 60, 70 yards in the air. And it was like, physically, this guy is so gifted. And I was watching Drew Lock today, and he's like the poor man Zach Wilson. And this is the hard part about quarterback, right? Both those two guys have more physical gifts than, let's say, Brock Purdy. They're more athletic. Their arms are definitely more powerful. But part of playing quarterback is, one, an innate feel, being able to handle calling plays, knowing what all their 10 guys are doing, reading a defense, reacting when you're pressured, reacting when shit goes wrong, being accurate when plays are there, being accurate when plays are not. It's insanely difficult to play. We all know this at this point now. And Zach, for the most part, has never shown the instincts of how to play. And then because his instincts are all off, he gets all out of whack and his accuracy is terrible. But you watch him today, especially in the second half, he was just so smooth and under control. It's like, where has this, any semblance of this been? If you had just shown bits and pieces of this, your story would be dramatically different. And I don't come from a family that has like addictive qualities. So I've been around addiction, but not like truly close with family members through, family friends or definitely friends of mine. But when it's a situation that's not like a mom, a dad, a brother, even a friend that you see every day, there's a distance between it and you don't feel it. But when you hit rock bottom, right? And a lot of times it takes someone to hit rock bottom, and just, in the world of addiction, just because you hit rock bottom doesn't mean you ever get out of it. I had a good friend that, could never shake stuff, and, you go down the wrong path, it costs you your life, right? In sports, a lot of times you hear guys that hit rock bottom with their own careers. It costs them their careers. And luckily it's not life or death. You just get out of the league, get cut, your career ends. And then they talk about when they're older, right? If their career ends young in their 20s, how, God, if I would have done this, this, and that different. And I didn't know at the time, and I lost it all. And I think you see with Zach Wilson, how did he not hit rock bottom over the last couple of weeks? He was benched for Tim fucking Boyle. That's one of the most embarrassing things you'll ever see. He was the number 2 pick in the draft for Tim Boyle. Even last year, Mike White, kind of understandable, or even Joe Flacco. Tim Boyle, and maybe he just looked in the mirror and realized, like, what are we doing? And sometimes, and this is the hard part about pro sports, even if you do have a rock bottom moment, you might just not be good enough. There's like a fine line between looking in the mirror and going like, I need to take a deep breath. I'm better than this. I need to focus harder. I need to work harder. And maybe your skills just aren't good enough, right? This is the highest level, the most competitive league. It just sometimes you're just not going to be good enough. I watch Zach Wilson. Physically, he is good enough. Hell, I watch Drew Lock and think he's good enough. Now, Drew Lock is not as smooth when he even looks good as Zach Wilson, but both guys like just make you wonder. Now, I don't think Drew Lock will ever be good. He's older, obviously. I do watch Zach Wilson and go, I just wonder if there could be a moment where he figures out. And that doesn't mean to become some, high level player, but he should not be as bad as he's been. And today, I watched a ton of that game. It was pretty fun to watch. He is a fun player. He is a very physically gifted, enjoyable, like his traits are enjoyable to watch when you're on the couch. And you just never know in sports. We've seen a lot of guys, and listen, I'm guilty of this. This guy sucks. He's never going to be shit. Cut him, get him out of here. And guys figure it out later, right? Maybe they get with the right coach. Maybe they needed their own ego cut down to the whatever nth degree where they just needed to basically start from scratch. Maybe a situation like Zach Wilson, but crazier things have happened. I watched this clip during the Cowboy-Eagle game of Trent Williams talking in the locker room after the game, and he discussed Brock Purdy because people keep acting like he's a system quarterback and, it's all the weapons and he's not doing, and he said something that I've been saying for a while. I don't think you can overemphasize how important the conversation that revolves around Brock Purdy all falls back to his draft pick. He even used Zach Wilson. He said, if Brock Purdy, which is kind of ironic because the Niners had the next pick, Trey Lance. So he could have just said, if Brock Purdy had been Trey Lance, we'd be like, God damn, this guy's incredible. What a pick. You traded all those picks. Who cares? They turned into Tyreek Hill, Bradley Chubb. None of it matters. Jalen Waddle. You got Trey Lance is this if Brock Purdy had been drafted 3. But when you're a late round pick, and listen, I'm not acting like I'm not guilty of this either. You go, this guy can't be that good. This is a flash in the pan. It happens a lot with a lot of different players. But at this point in time, one, that there's no discussion if the guy can play or not. He clearly can play, right? And now the discussion is this guy going to go on to be consistently one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL? And listen, the way he's playing, he's played like a top 5 quarterback this year. Do I think he's a top 5 quarterback overall in the NFL? Well, sample size is pretty small. But in 2023, it's not even debatable that he's a high-end, top-level quarterback this season. The other thing that he does that most quote-unquote system quarterbacks just cannot do is consistently throw bombs. I mean, part of what the Brock Purdy experience this season has had like a Mahomes, Allen, Herbert, Hurts level flair. He will push the ball way down the field. So anyone saying he's just dinking and dunking to his skill guys are just refuse to change their opinion. I don't know what's wrong with changing your opinion. Things change all the time in our personal lives, in our professional lives. Like 10 years ago, podcasts barely exist. Radio dominated. What do you think is happening in 2023? What do you think the case will be in 2026? Whatever podcasts are now, they're going to be dramatically bigger. What about 2038? Who knows? I mean, I wouldn't guarantee that podcasts are the number one thing. Things might change again. As you see things and things develop, if you don't change your opinion, you're crazy. I thought the Lions were really good earlier in the season. You watch them play now, they're not playing very good. They have major issues. The quarterback can't play outside. I don't like them as much as I did a month ago. Why? I got some more data. Changed my opinion. I wouldn't in a million years said last year at this time, Brock Purdy's a high-end player. 7th round pick. Started like one game. Well, a year later, I watched the guy play week in, week out. 95% of his moments as a starter have been good. Even his bad games, had a lot of good moments in the bad games, which he hasn't had many bad games. Now, do I think he's going to be some all-time great quarterback? I have no clue. We're in fucking year 2. But based on right now, he's one of the best 7th round picks we've ever seen. I looked it up the other day. The best 7th round quarterback, you could argue, is Ryan Fitzpatrick. So the bar is pretty low. I just think this conversation, which, listen, I understand why goes on and on and on. The 49ers are easily one of the biggest fan bases in the NFL. So when you talk about them, it's just a quantity game. More people react. Like when I talk shit on social media or on here about the Lakers, I'm not doing it to get a reaction. I legitimately don't like them. But I also do know, like, I'm not talking about I don't even know, the Orlando Magic, some team without fans. They have more fans than anybody. I know that for a fact, right? Like, if I hated the Yankees and I was always talking shit, I could say, hey, listen, I don't like them, but I'd be the first to acknowledge, like, they're just bigger than everyone else. And listen, the Cowboys are the biggest. You could make a strong argument that the 49ers are the biggest. So when you see these people talking on TV over and over, like Nick Wright not going to pivot his opinion, he's so dumb. He sees the metrics. And there's a big difference between like, oh, that's just clickbait. It's like, guys, I've never been paid for a tweet. I'm just telling you what I think, right? And like television clickbait, or just you realize you got a good topic. It's interesting. Some people will pivot, some people won't. But if you're not pivoting now, it's kind of a shtick. It's just like the gimmick of your show. And I'm not even picking on him. It could be anybody. A lot of people are talking shit about the guy. And shit about the guy strong. Just refuse to give the guy, as the kids would say, his flowers.